years later on.
But first of all, would you date a man 20 years your senior? Would you give him kisses and cuddles in exchange for expensive gifts? The ultimate sugar daddy, Hugh Hefner's latest squeeze, is a whopping 60 years younger than him. Cool. Daddy Cool. Reports today suggest his third wife will have access to his $43 million fortune because he's not bothering with a prenup. And the Hoff has been reported to be in a relationship with a factory girl from Wales, 27 years his junior. Can this really be love? Well, joining us today, journalists Helen Croydon and Hepzibah Anderson. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
And, of course, Mr. Westwood himself. Let's go to you first, Helen, because you've written a book entitled The Sugar Daddy Diaries.
Sugar Daddy Diaries. I have lots of experience.
How does a nice girl like you come to be keeping a sugar daddy diary, please?
Well, I initially joined sugardaddy.com about 4 years ago because I'd always had a thing for older men. You know, there is something very attractive about older men. But I'd parked this idea in the back of my head, you know, never really done anything about it. And I was going on dates with guys my own age, but all they seemed to talk about was beer and football, you know. And I was bored, and I wasn't stimulated, and I wasn't inspired. And I think in the back of my head, I had this fantasy of meeting a Pierce Brosnan lookalike in a sophisticated
down the table. Look at that
box.
face he's making. Look at that Pierce Brosnan lookalike.
Yeah,
Look at that
there's
type of thing, you mean?
You need to put a few years on yourself first.
Oh,
Not old
with the chance, baby.
Not old enough to be a sugar daddy. That's good.
I need some more money, to be honest with you. I could probably be your sugar daddy for about a fortnight, and then I'd run out.
You know, there is a misconception that women who go for older men are looking for money. But, you know, money is a byproduct of the things which make them interesting and attractive. And for me, it was, you know, there's something very attractive about success and wisdom and the idea of a guy who knows what he is about. You know?
But what about a really successful road sweeper or a really, really successful bin man or someone who's been very, very successful indeed at thinking their own thoughts? Would that be attractive, or do you have to have a big fat wallet too?
I mean, I use the term successful, you know, lightly, and everyone has, you know, a different idea to what they found attractive and what they found successful. And to me, it was the idea of someone intellectually stimulating who could maybe give me a glimpse of his glamorous life that at the time, I was working as a broadcast journalist at ITN at the time, and I was very bored with my job, and I just wanted to glimpse a little bit of a world that I didn't really have access to. And I think at the time, you know, I wasn't looking for a relationship. That's the most important thing. I wanted to date.
Is this a very fancy schmancy way of saying I wanted someone rich to take me to places I couldn't afford to go to?
Well, the idea.
You know, I wanted a glimpse. I mean, let me just quote you yourself.
Product.
I wanted a glimpse of a glamorous world. That just means I wanted someone to pick up.
Well, I wanted to. I had this sort of, you know, a glamorous fantasy of sitting in a bar with someone who was intellectually interesting, I could sip a martini with, and this was a phase I was going through. I was coming out of a breakup, and I didn't want a relationship. And
let me go to Tim Westwood first, and then I'll ask Hepzibah what you think. Do you buy this, that what a young girl really wants from a sugar daddy is intellectual stimulation and a glimpse of a glamorous life?
I mean, looking at you, I can tell it was all about the intellectual stimulation. No question about that.
You can tell a
you
lot
wanted a
by
sip of
looks of
martini and have something very intellectual going on. And I think with Hugh Hefner, you've got to understand, he's, you know, he's #1 playboy in the game. He is interested in playmates. He probably has a lot more in common with his fiancée than, say, he had a wife who was also 84. He probably likes looking like a lot of guys, like looking at perky things.
Yes.
He wouldn't get that from an 84-year-old woman, I don't think. And he likes playmates and he likes playgirls, so there's probably a lot more in common.
What people should look for in a relationship,
Exactly.
you know? And actually, why do we have to find a soulmate in a relationship? If Hugh Hefner doesn't want to find that, doesn't want to follow that conventional model, and you know, for most people, that is what most people are looking for, is that, you know, commitment and security and someone that shares their views. But for me, while I was going through my sugar daddy phase, and possibly for Hugh Hefner, and possibly for that they might not be looking for that soulmate.
Let's bring Hepzibah in, because she hasn't just dreamed the dream, she's lived the fantasy.
Oh yes, indeed. Although there was less sugar involved in my older guy than
Why was he broke?
Perhaps his career was sort of an indulgence. But again, you know,
just like old dudes.
there was some. Well, no, interestingly, the first date I didn't even realise it was a date. It just hadn't crossed my mind. But, you know, very seductive, very intellectually interesting.
How much older than you?
24 years. Almost a quarter of a century, as I like to tease him.
And at the time, you were how old?
At the time, I was 27, and all of that was attractive. And, you know, there wasn't financial cosseting, but I think there was you know, emotional cosseting. He was very grateful, very doting, very confident. But, you know, fast forward to now, we did break up. It wasn't my choice, but I'm very grateful that he did.
Why are
We're
you
still
grateful that you're not with him
We're
anymore?
still friends.
Why?
Because now, you know, an older guy, I think the older you get as a woman, the less appealing the older guys get, because they also get older. And I think that probably there is a too old, especially if you're looking to get married, you're looking to have kids. They're not a good bet.
Intellectual. I mean, surely the mind matures gracefully.
Well, I just keep thinking of that scene in Sex and the City when Samantha is copping off with that really old dude.
Yes.
And then there's this rear shot of his extremely crinkly bottom. Do you remember that bit?
Yeah.
And
Did that work for you guys?
No.
But the thing is, people say age is just a number, but it shouldn't just be a number. It should come with experience, and you know, we should grow up. But we're so reluctant to grow up, and I think you've got to be really wary of the kind of guy who wants to spend his time in his mid-50s hanging out with mid-20-something women.
But
surely
what Tim Westwood says is true. Men like looking at young, perky things. They probably like being around young, perky things. So why be wary of a man who likes that? Isn't that just what any man would do if they had the chance, and possibly the sugar, as we've been saying?
It isn't just physical, I don't think. It isn't about that. I think what a lot of the men on this sugar daddy website that I came across when I was writing my book is that they're not just looking for sex, because if they were, you know, there's plenty of other websites that they can go to for that. They like the romance, and they like the idea of having... They want
romance of a website called Sugar Daddy.
They want what they're looking for. They want a continuity with someone. They want to date someone, but they don't necessarily have the time or the emotional energy to fully invest in someone. But, you know, it is about having an emotional rapport. It is about a genuine bond and a connection and a degree of continuity. So they want, but they don't want to meet someone every day, you know, and that's what they want.
We went out into the street. We went to see what people thought. Is it a good idea to have a relationship with a sugar daddy?
Could you date a man 20 years your senior?
I already had a boyfriend who was 12 years older than me, so I would think that 20 years older would be fine as well.
When it gets to that much of an age gap, you kind of look up to them like a father figure, I think.
If they're able to, you know, provide for and satisfy women to the fullest, no matter what they do, I wouldn't look at it as a sugar daddy. I would look at it as you satisfy my needs, full stop.
I'm 21 years older than my wife. Quite happy.
Okay, let me tell you something. There are some downsides because they're like over-possessive and they act like your father half the time and always lecturing you, but no, on the other side, they're more loving and more caring. And that's honest God truth.
I really don't know what I think about it. I kind of think it's all right, you know, because I kind of think that women like older guys anyway. I remember being in a record company meeting once, and the guy said, how old are you? I said I was 31 at the time. He said, oh, that's great. We can always get young girls to buy, because young girls fancy older men, you know, and so we can always get young girls to buy men's records, you know, because they fancy Brad Pitt. You know, women who are 13 fancy Brad Pitt, George Clooney and all that. So the older thing is not really a problem for me, you know. And then having money, well, men are supposed to provide for their woman. That's the way I was kind of brought up.
For God's sake, when were you born? 1805?
No, but that's...
Bring
those are the things that have been installed
quickly.
into me. Michael, what do you think about the whole sugar daddy?
Well, I think there's a big difference between a man who falls in love with a girl who's, you know, a man who's 90 years old or 70 years old, who's fallen in love with a girl who's 30, and a man who enjoys acquiring girls who's...
What, like Hugh Hefner? There's a difference between a real relationship
yes,
and
but
Hugh
I
Hefner,
think
like...
and in Hugh Hefner's case, I think, I mean, he is the
Why wouldn't you do
soul man behind the Playboy Mansion, so I think I'll excuse him in that sense. I mean, he would, you know, but I think there's a whole, you know,
there's a whole difference
army of men out there
who like younger.
Who like younger
time
girls.
takes its toll, but not on the eyes.
And also, there are a whole army of girls out there who like older men.
Yeah.
And you know, in some ways, I think you know, sex and money are power, and sometimes, you know, if sex and money...
So you're saying it's a fair exchange.
I'm saying...
She's providing sex, youth, and pertness, and he's providing cash, a good car, nice dinners, and whatever.
Absolutely, depending on what they're looking for at that time, if that's what she's looking for. And you know,
there's also this element of having fun. You know,
fun?
like...
What's that? This is all very serious, as you can tell.
No, but I think it could be fun, like...
Well, that's not so much fun as you'd expect, because they turn out to be sort of set
Maybe you got the wrong one.
They're insecure about going out
yours
with
was
the
a
older
little
women. The
broke, I heard.
confidence that attracts you to...
But I mean, if you've got someone with like a lot of money...
Here's the thing. Mr. Westwood, men, as you say, like a pert young thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all understand that. But is there not a little particle within a man, somewhere deep within his soul, where he wants to be loved for himself, and he wants to be, you know, that it's his conversation and it's his sensitivity. It's not the restaurants and the holidays.
Do you think that dude like to enjoy spending his money on that woman and having some fun?
But is it fun to spend money on a woman?
But what you get after you spend that money is fun.
Very interesting to me.
That's the type of fun I'm talking about.
You know what? Sorry to Jane, but I think that when you're young, you're kind of programmed as a man that, you know, you won't get a nice girlfriend or you won't, unless you acquire things. It's all about your place in life as a man, whether you're, it's not about being good looking or anything, it's about what you own, what car you drive. It's, I mean, that's kind of the way you're programmed as a black.
Brought up like that. I actually think there's an element of biological programming in that, not just that we're brought up to think that. I do think, you know, men and women are very different, and I do think there's an element of it's quite innate for a woman to be attracted to someone who can provide for her.
What about the attraction of a starving musician, for example?
But we take it to a base.
An artist.
I had my dinner when I met you.
You weren't starving? I made you chicken soup. What do you mean? That's why you fell for me.
Very nice. Lisa, would you go out with a sugar daddy?
For me personally, no.
Yeah, why not?
Why is that?
I like a nice, fit young man, exactly like my husband. You know, I like them. It's the grey, the wrinkles. It goes back to what Vanessa said about the. No, just doesn't do it for me. Yes, nice-looking man, but for me personally, I like a young man who's going to be able to enjoy life with me at the same pace as me, all that type of thing. But
all right,
for
well,
me,
George, it's a shame because George Clooney's outside. He was just waiting for you. We've had to tell him, get on your bike. Thanks to Helen, thanks to Hepzibah. Tim's staying with us after the break. Nick says leaving the business world to become a stay-at-home dad has meant he's around for cooking and for cuddles. But can you have a successful career and a family? We'll see you in just a few minutes.